Hey guys, so as a lot of you know, I recently got back from my semester abroad in the Philippines, and I thought that I would share some tips for you as an American student about what I experienced and what to expect if you do decide to go. So these are going to be tips tailored very specifically to students, not necessarily traveling around or tips about living in the Philippines, but things to know as a university student. I could give you 100 reasons as to why you should study abroad in the Philippines, but that's a whole nother video. Let's get started. So 3 key differences that I noticed as a student in class were the emphasis on groups, the reliance on Facebook, and the amount of security on campus. As far as groups goes, the Philippines is a very family-oriented country. A lot of our classwork revolved around group work, whether it was going to be a group project or a group quiz, or we often did what they called a GD, a group dynamic, which was just group work all the time, and everybody in class knows everybody, which of course is not exactly what it's like here. Like here you can talk to somebody all semester and never know their name, but it's not like that at all over there. Everybody knows everybody. Another thing is that we never referred to our instructors as professor or doctor. It was very formal. It was either sir or ma'am all the time. For security, this was something that I definitely was not expecting and probably maybe took me the longest to get used to. All of the police in the Philippines carry machine guns. So walking to school, like on the sidewalks, there would be police stationed with machine guns. At the gate to get into school, machine guns. In the library, at the grocery store, everywhere. So it was a little scary at first, but of course that's just their job and everybody's used to it over there. So it just took some getting used to. And the reliance on Facebook. Okay, so this I thought was kind of crazy, but the way that we use D2L or email, like everything is on Facebook. If we ever needed any information about our grades or class or contacting the professors, everything was through Facebook. Which was kind of funny because then like all your professors and everyone in class sees what you post all the time. But again, like back to that group thing, like that's just how they do it. So the Philippines actually adopted the traditional American university system. So all of my credits transferred exactly. So I was taking 3 credit classes just like you would here, and the syllabi were very similar. We would have like 2 or 3 tests and projects, whereas that is really different from the European system. And coming from another Jesuit institution, it was a very easy transition going to the school that I went to because the Philippines is also super Catholic. I cannot stress this enough. You are going to want to live as close to school as possible because the traffic is insane. If you can walk, that's your best bet. If you have to take a trike or a couple jeepneys, that's okay, but you really should not have to rely on driving to get to school because traffic is insane. You can drive for hours and hours and only be a couple miles away. Wish I was kidding. I've been trying to think of something that I could compare it to if it's like New York or LA, but it's really not. It's like stop and go, like rush hour traffic all day long, like at 3 a.m. It's awful. One thing that I really struggled with was not having a set schedule all the time. They are very into having flexible dates that can be moved around. For example, like my first week of class was actually just canceled. One of my classes, the first 5 weeks were canceled. They don't have the necessity for a rigid schedule the way that we do. So that definitely took some getting used to. And I really wanted to get that schedule, particularly because we didn't know when all the Filipino holidays were and when we were going to have class off so that we could plan to travel on our breaks. I think this is kind of related, but maybe a little bit of a different page, but the Filipinos have what they call Filipino time, same as if you go to like Italy or anywhere else where there's this slow, like Spanish time. They're late for everything, and they're just very slow paced. Like even to walking on the sidewalks. I know that maybe as somebody from New York, I would have a very dramatic interpretation of how slow they're walking, but I'm telling you, like it was slow and all the time. They're never in a rush to get anywhere. It would not be out of the ordinary for a professor to be half an hour late to class, or um, or for your date to show up an hour late. I don't know. Partially that is attributed to traffic because it is so awful, but mostly it's just the mindset. Like they're not in a rush for anything. It was interesting. So our student IDs are actually official government documents. So you can use those to travel around or anything, like whatever you use your driver's license for, or maybe even your passport, like you could use your student ID for, which was really good for us because we would have to send in our passports for our visa renewal every 2 months or so, but because they're so slow, we never ever had our passports. So we would use our student IDs to travel and also to get some really good discounts for being a student. And people would often not believe that I was a student because I don't fit the typical Filipino look. So if I would show them my alien card, which you will also get shortly after you arrive, you can use that like at the bank and everything. That was good for us for student discounts if it was going to be in a taxi or a Grab or a store wherever we went. This I still think is funny. They do not take rules very seriously. So back like to the calendar, like they don't need that rigid schedule. They don't need rigid anything. Everything is a suggestion, especially in things like driving, like red lights or stop signs. It's a suggestion. You don't have to stop. Yeah, you can go slower, maybe. You can drive on the sidewalks. You can walk in the middle of the street, like anything. We saw like this. People were pushing baby strollers like on the highway. Which, okay, to be fair, the traffic is so bad that the cars are driving really slowly. But a baby stroller on the highway, and people would like tell you stuff in your windows as you were driving, like on EDSA and stuff. Just we're not used to that kind of thing here. Another thing specifically for school is that assignments are always pushed back. I would never expect to actually have to turn my paper in on the day that they said. Oh, and our grades were never in. You could never ask a professor like what your class standing was or how everything was going because they didn't know, because they didn't grade, because it wasn't on their mind. It wasn't something that was really important. We're like here, like we want to check up and see how we're doing. That's just not their mindset at all. School supplies. Okay, so I did bring some school supplies with me, which I ended up being really glad that I did because they didn't sell it in the Philippines. Like they don't have 2 pocket folders or like 3 subject notebooks or college ruled paper. They don't have that. But what they do have, they have 4 different sized papers, none of which are our traditional 9x11 or whatever. But your professor will be very specific about what kind of paper they want you to use for class, whether it's size 1, 2, 3, or 4. And honestly, I'm still not really sure what all the sizes were, but they were all different than what we were used to. So we did have to end up buying some of that kind of paper. They don't use notebooks like we do. So Filipinos prefer to use what we would probably consider to be like journals or diaries, like the smaller, more decorative kind of journals, but for all of their notes, for all of their classes. And another thing was that textbooks were super cheap because they would copyright them. Again, rules are suggestions. Like, it didn't really matter that they were being copyrighted because there were no consequences for that. So why not? My textbooks were like $5, $6 in like paper and printing costs. But yeah, I mean, if it works for them, it works. Filipinos will tell you that there are 2 seasons, and they'll either say that there's hot and hotter, or dry and wet. So I guess what you would consider to be the hot and wet season was when I was there. So we got there in July, which was prime typhoon season. And I'm still not really sure what a typhoon is, but the best way that I can explain it is like a light hurricane. And you can expect this hurricane like maybe once a week. Not stress this enough. Bring an umbrella. You're gonna need it. Bring a rain poncho. Yeah, like the whole, awful, I know, but like, trust me on that one. You could bring rain boots, but the flooding is often so bad that it could just fill them up. Especially if you're like down on a hill. Class was often canceled, not necessarily because of the rain, but because the flooding was just so awful. And people get really sick when it floods like that because of the bacteria in the water. So another thing, don't step in the puddles. But I actually never had a normal week of class. Like never once the entire semester did I have a week where a class was not canceled for rain or something, flooding, whatever it was, some weather-related thing, like the entire semester from August to December. I don't really know how to explain this one, but I would just say be prepared to get a lot of attention. So there's not a lot of diversity in Manila, and there's a very distinct Filipino look, and I do not fit it. So people would ask me about the Statue of Liberty and food portion sizes before they even knew where I was from. The same thing like with my European friends. Anybody that was white was asked about being American. People would drive by us on the sidewalk and yell out their car like USA, which of course I would never expect something like that, and definitely not used to it. Like would be super weird if somebody did that here. I think one of the reasons that I struggled with getting all this attention at first was because with the extreme heat and humidity, it was nearly impossible for me to do my hair or have makeup on. So to have all of these interactions with strangers, when I knew that I wasn't looking my best, was kind of frustrating for me, but it's something that I had to get used to. I would say avoid going to all of the American fast food restaurants. I wasn't expecting there to be so many of them. Your typical McDonald's, KFC, Burger King, Pizza Hut, everything. The menus are different, and a lot of them will have the Filipinos' favorite dish, which would be sweet spaghetti and fried chicken together, so you can get that almost anywhere, McDonald's, KFC, Jollibee. Something to try while you're there, with banana ketchup, of course. But I would definitely say try foods like chicken adobo or go to a boodle fight. One thing that I really like to do was order on Food Panda, which it's the same as Uber Eats, but they don't have Uber Eats, or they don't have Uber there, which was really nice for me because we could use our credit cards, which a lot of places did not accept cards because only 4% of Filipinos have credit cards, which is another thing. You're always going to have cash on you, which I was not used to because we always have our cards here. So I hadn't carried cash since I was in middle school. Going to the ATM regularly became part of my routine. But again, just something that I wasn't used to and wasn't really expecting. So that's all I have today. So thank you for listening, and I hope that I gave you some good tips about, your study abroad experience in the Philippines. See ya!